What's going, everyone? Happy Wednesday. Another great day. The day before the NFL draft. Lots of exciting things going on. NBA playoffs. How are you doing today, Korea?
I'm doing good. It's kind of crazy that it snuck up on me, but NFL draft starts tomorrow, first round. Obviously, tons of headlines making the news. But it's okay. Um, Especially with the Seahawks. I've seen a lot of late rumors, but you never know until draft day actually is here. Ari, how you doing?
Yep, for sure. Lots of exciting things going on in the world of sports that we'll go over today. We'll start off with the NBA playoffs like we always do, and we'll get the brooms out first. With the Celtics sweeping, I know you're going to say last episode that Ben Simmons, you're going to have something to say about him. But we'll just go into Tatum, Smart, and Brown. All had 20-plus point games. Durant, he showed up to the extent of scoring, but he's still super inefficient. But at least he took shots. Unlike last game in Game 3 when he took like 11 shots, at least he was more aggressive in this game. Kyrie, another average game, 20 points. Seth Curry was really good, 23 points. It was exciting and came down, to the last minute, and Nets had a chance. Korea, what's your what's your takeaway from the series as a whole, and I guess kind of the future of Brooklyn?
I actually thought this team could actually win 7 games. I thought they could win in 7. I legit thought that Brooklyn could win in 7. And the only reason I thought that is because KD and Kyrie were going to score and average at least 30. Where the hell were they? Especially Kyrie Irving, Mr. Sage over here. Mr. Oh, I'm not going to get vaccinated. Him, his goofy ass. I'm done with this dude. Look, I don't know what to tell everyone. I love Kyrie Irving. Like, when he's basketball, this man is this man is a top point guard in this league. When he's actually playing good basketball, when he's doing all these antics and just all of his distractions with his vaccination status, that comes into play here. And now you want to own up to it at the end of the season. Why didn't you own up to it at the beginning of the damn season when you said you were going to give? Why didn't you say anything then? Now you want to say stuff at the end of the season when you're going to Cancun with KD with your nonsense. It was ridiculous. I don't know what to say about this team. Look, I mean, the Nets were definitely one of the bigger disappointments. I mean, obviously the Nets and Lakers have to be one of the top disappointments I've ever seen. And people are saying this KD and Kyrie first round has to be one of the most disappointing first rounds or just disappointments I've ever seen since LeBron in 2011. I've never seen so much disappointment for a team that had so much hype. Remember, this team was high as the 2 seed. They were supposed to be running the East, and they have the play-in banner back at home instead of actually trying to get the NBA Finals banner. So, and then Mr. Ben Simmons, Mr. Model over here, Mr. One-Way Model, showing off his clothes instead of actually showing his ability to play basketball. It just shows you, like, I would say there's a winner, but then James Harden with his non-ass self not shooting the damn ball correctly in Philly. Like, I don't know who won this trade. Like, both teams are suffering from this trade. Like, Ben Simmons not wanting to play basketball and James Harden not playing the game of basketball correctly. Like, so the Nets have a bunch of questions heading into next season. Obviously, Kyrie's going to be a free agent. He says that he's going to stay, but I can't trust him because obviously he did the same thing to Boston. He's like, oh, I'm going to come back. Oh, I'm coming back. And where'd he go? He went with KD to Brooklyn. So if Kyrie is really coming back, I think he would have shut his mouth and just I'm looking forward to next season. But the fact that he already said that, oh, I'm already looking forward to next season. Yeah, we're going to bring it. Yeah, no. I don't think the Nets are going to make a huge offer for him. And I don't think anyone in such a desperate situation needs him because, like, there's teams that need a point guard that need him. And imagine, there were talks of KD, Kyrie, and Zion in New York. Remember those talks? The Knicks fans out there, they were saying that. But, it's disappointing to see the Nets just crumble like this in front of our faces. I thought it'd be funny, but it's 2022. It's 3 years for Kyrie, almost 4 for KD now after that big contract they signed at the same time, and there's been no rings. Wait, where do you go from here if you're the Brooklyn Nets? Obviously, you're trading your assets away because you've relied so much on KD and Kyrie. Now you have Ben Simmons, Mr. Controversial himself, and you don't have a great supporting cast. What do you do? So for the Brooklyn future is very bleak. Obviously, they're going to try and stick with Steve Nash, even though, Steve Nash, I'm not putting 100% of the blame on, but there is some blame for Steve Nash in this. I mean, when you have a team that is just focused on the offensive side of the ball and no defense, that's not going to win you games. And that's pretty evident when teams stop you on the offensive side of the ball, and then you can't guard their offense because it's so good, like the Celtics. So the Nets need a whole new obviously Ben Simmons is going to have to play because they need a defensive presence because they don't have any. And they're like the Hornets right now. The Nets and the Hornets are the same, in my opinion. They are focused so much on the offense, their defense lacks. So I think the Nets really need to find some defensive presence that's really going to stop these teams like the Celtics or the Bucks, teams that are getting better in the East if they really want to compete for a title. So the Nets need to just focus on getting defensive presence and, trying to find their big man. They need to find their big man because this rotation of Drummond and Claxton is nice, but you need someone who can start you 82 games because this is not going to be because they're doing that platoon and that's not really helping them. Like playing Drummond just to move Claxton in, they need to find a big man. So that's pretty much all I got to say about the Nets. Just disappointment. Shame to see. Maybe next year for those clowns.
Yeah, it's pretty wild that the first round series most were looking forward to the most ended up in a sweep, but the Nets definitely got, I'd say, a little bit exposed with how kind of reliant they are, on Durant and Kyrie. And I mean, they had guys like Curry and Bruce Brown, kind of step up at times, but overall, the Celtics defense definitely kind of showcased in the series how good they are, not just individually with Marcus Smart winning Defensive Player of the Year, but kind of as a unit as well, with all the rotations and whatnot. And that will kind of lead me into the next game that we'll talk about, which was the Raptors forcing Game 6. And this is the Raptors team that I was expecting to see when I picked them to win the series in 7 games. Their, rotation defensively was what stood out most to me. Double teaming Embiid, but then still being able to get back in time, to rotate enough to still contest all the shots and everything. Embiid looked better than Game 4. He looks better. He looks better than the previous game, but still his passing and he still definitely wasn't the same. Harden's struggles continued. Maxey still isn't being as aggressive as he was earlier in the series, and the Raptors, even without Fred VanVleet, Siakam had another solid game. Anunoby, Trent, Achua, they just kind of play well together. They have no Embiid, no Harden, no superstar player, but they just play well as a unit. They also have a lot, or not, I don't know if I'd say a lot better, but just more production from the bench and more energy from the bench as well. I know it's with Boucher and then Achua coming off the bench. VanVleet, I think I saw was doubtful so he might miss another game, but with the way they've looked these last 2 games with him missing all but one quarter, they've shown that they don't really necessarily quote unquote need him to win these games. I know you had the Sixers in 7. I had the Raptors in 7. Are you kind of getting a little bit more nervous with your selection? Or are you still confident in Philly?
I'm getting nervous because Doc Rivers is that coach. That's the only reason why I'm getting nervous. Doc Rivers, and he's slamming reporters for this. I don't know why the hell this man's slamming reporters for this. This man has a track record of blowing leads. Look, we've seen this evident throughout his time as a Clippers head coach, as the Boston Celtics head coach, and now he's at Philly, and he's gonna do it again. I'm so done with this team. Look, why is James Harden doing James Harden things in the playoffs? he has been in so many situations, this man, where he has had assets. I mean, first, we talked about the Thunder when he was a sixth man, and then he goes to Houston, and Chris Paul comes in. Oh, that doesn't work. Oh, Russell Westbrook, and oh, that doesn't work either. Then he goes to Brooklyn. Oh, that doesn't work either. Now he's in Philly. Oh, we can't shoot the ball again. I am sick and tired of this James Harden is a top player narrative. I'm saying this out loud right now. If James Harden is a top player, why the hell does he not show up in the damn playoffs? He does this every year. And look, I'm not putting the blame on Maxey, because Maxey, it's his first year. He's still young. He needs to learn. Obviously, he needs to be more aggressive in these type of games, because it's win or go home situations right now. And you're in a 3-1 series without Fred VanVleet, and you lose at home by that much. Where the hell is James Harden? I'm sick of this man not showing up when it matters. He needs to show up. I'm calling him out now. James Harden, you need to show up. Pascal Siakam does it. Why can't you? Huh? James Harden, you need to show up. Well, I'm sick and tired of saying this, but Joel Embiid has a torn ligament in his thumb. You need your thumb to shoot the ball. James Harden, why haven't you shot the ball correctly? Where are you? I need like some kind of binoculars to find James Harden right now, because he's not here. He's not here. And now you're going to a game 6 in Toronto without Matisse Thybulle, obviously, but now you're going to an environment where they think they actually have a chance now. And Toronto, they're going to be electric because it's game 6 in Toronto. And the Sixers are looking. And then did you see the line of Sixers fans leaving Monday night? I mean, they were just flooding the exits. They're scared too, because Doc Rivers is known for this. Where the hell is James Harden? I'm not putting 100% of the blame on Doc Rivers, but James Harden needs to show up. That's all I got to say. James Harden needs to show up.
Well, when you went through this round with Siakam, he showed up. So we'll see if Harden can do the same in this next game after, which I believe is tomorrow on Thursday for Game 6. Definitely a huge game, because if the Raptors do win, that would be 3 straight with all the momentum. You know, Game 7's in Philly, but they just won in Philly pretty easily. So we could be seeing history. The first blown 3-0 lead. You know it's gonna happen at some point. It's just a matter of when. And after these last 2 games, this definitely seems like it's very possible. But you know, the Raptors still have to win 2. Sixers need to win 1, so it's still advantage Sixers on paper. But the momentum is quickly moving to Toronto if they can take care of business at home and force a Game 7. In Philly. So now we will move on to this game. The most embarrassing or the most confusing team in the playoffs in the Jazz. 77. I don't know what the record is for lowest points in the playoff game, but this has to be like pretty close, I would imagine. 77 points. Another struggle for Donovan Mitchell, 4 of 15, I believe. Bogdanovich is 0 for 9. Clarkson had another big game, 20 points. He's been solid all series. Luka had another huge game, 33. Brunson, 24. The Jazz were 3 of 30 from the 3-point line. You're never winning a game shooting like that. Carrillo, are you done with the Jazz?
I'm done. I am done. They look like they're not trying to win this series. They look like they want to go to Cancun. I am done with this Jazz team. Donovan Mitchell is playing like he wants to play for the Warriors. Why? Because he doesn't want to be on the Jazz. He plays like he doesn't want to play with that team. I mean, obviously, Bogdanovich, he had a bad shooting day. That's acceptable. Donovan Mitchell has been playing like absolute garbage this whole season. This whole series. I have not seen this man shoot above 50% this whole series. Donovan Mitchell, where have you gone to? Donovan Mitchell, right, and James Harden, those 2 men just disappear. They disappear in the playoffs. I don't get it. This Utah team, I'm done with. They don't look like they want to be past the second round. They look like they want to lose Game 6 back in Utah. Look, Luka, obviously, he's getting healthier. He's getting his groove back. He's doing Luka things. I had no doubt Luka was going to do that. Jalen Brunson had a good game. this Mavs team is gluing. But this Jazz team looks like they're falling away from just the pieces. They're crumbling. I cannot believe I have to say this, but the Jazz really need to let go of Donovan. They need to trade him. Donovan Mitchell needs to walk, because I think this is his last year of his contract, if I'm not mistaken. But if it is, he needs to get the hell out of Utah. Utah is going in the wrong direction. I already said they're not going to make the playoffs next year, and I 100% stand by that. I already saw their stupid new jerseys that look like knockoff Oregon Ducks uniforms. I've seen just how Donovan Mitchell is shooting like he doesn't want to play for the team. The Jazz don't know how to play basketball right now. They don't know what to do. Then you have Hassan White trying to fight Luka Doncic, he's getting owned in the paint. Like, Hassan, what are you doing? You're a grown ass man getting dominated by Luka Doncic, and you're gonna get mad over that? Like, play basketball better. If you want to be hit, if you want to get in his face, play basketball better. That's all I gotta say. I'm done. I'm done with the Jazz. Their franchise is going down the wrong path. They're gonna have to rebuild. I think they may even finish last in the West next year if they really want to just implode everything. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, I don't think much more is to be said with the way Utah, I mean, and this is not just this year. It's like historically they're always really solid in the regular season, and the playoffs, just not the same team. So we'll move on to another struggling player in the playoffs, and Mr. Trae Young. Heat down Jimmy Butler and Kyle Lowry. You figure Atlanta has a chance to take the series back to Atlanta and then maybe, force 7 games. But the Heat's defense, even without Butler, still shuts down Trae Young. 11 points. He was at 9 until he had a couple free throws late. That pushed him double figures. But, yeah, I mean, it really just shows you the depth of this Miami team. I mean, you have Oladipo step right into the starting lineup, and he drops 23. Adebayo 20. Hero and Chus had 15+. Like, the depth of this Miami team is definitely for real. They complete the gentleman sweep in 5 games over Atlanta. Definitely, I mean, Atlanta was the 8 seed. Definitely a disappointing season overall for them after their Eastern Conference Finals run last year. Atlanta was able to take I think it was game 3, I believe, at home to avoid the sweep. But, I mean, even though Miami only won this game by 3, they still dominated the series. Like, overall, Trae Young, I was held single figure, or Legacy had double figures in game 5. Let's just say 11 points or less in 3 of the 5, maybe 4 of the 5, something like that. I know he had 1 big game, maybe 2. But, I mean, I think even Trae Young said after the game, I believe I saw giving credit to Miami's defense. Curry, what was your takeaway from this game and the series as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, Trae Young was just getting clamped. Obviously he was struggling, but you just got to credit Miami's defense. They've been playing hard all year. And you mentioned the depth. Obviously, they go deep. Jimmy Butler, obviously that man leading that team right now, and he wasn't even in along with Kyle Lowry. And just like the Heat, obviously losing 2 of your best players, 2 of your best shooters, but Victor Oladipo, big step up right there. A lot of people obviously were talking about how Victor Oladipo and Jimmy Butler are apparently beefing. They obviously squashed that in the post game. So you just see how this glued team is so deep. And obviously I 100% regret picking Philly to beat this team now in the second round. I think Miami could be the real deal. I think they could challenge potentially the Bucks if the Bucks win tonight, or potentially Boston if somehow they get out of that series potential matchup. But yeah, this Miami Heat team, they look so deep. They're a contender this year. I definitely underestimated them a little bit just because of the glue together pieces, and then obviously all the controversial stuff with the team beefing. But they just play like a group of professional athletes. They just know how to play basketball. They play as a team and they play defense very well. So yeah, Miami definitely a scary opponent for the next round between either Philly or Toronto. I would love to see Toronto just for that Kyle Lowry, revenge series against his former team. That would be cool to see, but we'll see that. We'll see what happens there. But in terms of for the Atlanta Hawks, they got to find a second scorer to Trae Young, like a elite scorer who can actually be that second guy Because
maybe it could be Hunter. He's kind of stepped up in the series. He had 35.
Yeah, Hunter. DeAndre Hunter did show up in this series a little bit, but the inconsistencies and his injuries. You never really know what will happen. So the big thing with this team is that obviously Trae Young is their leading guy. They depend on him a lot, and I think guys can step up, but I think they need a consistent role player or a consistent shooter who can be that guy when you can rely on, because you have like a Steph with a Clay. You have a KD with a Kyrie. Trae doesn't really have that many options that are really stepping up on a consistent basis, turning themselves from a star to a superstar or from a good guy to a star. And yes, I do believe DeAndre Hunter can be that guy, but there's the risk of injuries, and along with Bojan, with Bojan coming off the bench a lot of times, but still not being that main guy. Oh, God. What, Johan? Mariners game was on. Johan Ramirez just gave up a 3-1 homer. Was that G-Man?
2-run, yeah.
Oh, 2-1. Oh, yeah, I don't even know who that was. I'll take pictures of the Rays, but...
It was Kiermaier.
Kevin Kiermaier. Oh, God. I mean, it's a contact hitter. Whatever. Hawks, I think they need to find a consistent shooter to go along with Trae. I could definitely see the potential in guys like DeAndre Hunter and Bojan, but I mean, this series was all about Miami's defense. They knew what the task was. They needed to lock down Trae Young, and even Trae Young admitted, like, yeah, they did it, and that was the job. That was the task given to Miami. Trae Young obviously had that good game in what was that, game 3 or 4, I believe, where I
think it was 3 when they in the one win they had. He had the game winner.
Yeah, at home, game 3, the first home game. So other than that, obviously just a defensive. The defensive presence for Miami showed up. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're the number 1 team for a reason. There's still people doubting them, and yeah, I think both of us underestimate them a little bit. But I don't know. I still think Philly, Toronto. Well, I guess Philly, I don't know if Embiid's not fully healthy, but I think Toronto could definitely still give them a good series if Toronto can make that comeback. But I think I think just because of Embiid's injury, I think Toronto would match up better with them. But like you said, we'll see what happens in that series. So we'll move on to one of the more exciting games as of late, with the Grizzlies taking a 3-2 series lead over Minnesota with a 2-point victory. Ja had the monster dunk at the end of the 3rd quarter, and then the game-winning layup with like a second left in the 4th quarter of game 5. The last minute, the Wolves had the Karl Anthony Towns turnover when he tried to dribble through the double team, and then Russell had the brick where he just hit all backboard the last minute. Both of them, they were down 1. They could have taken the lead. And then they had the nice play set up for Anthony Edwards to tie it up with 4 seconds left. But then Edwards gambles in the steal and the inbounds in the last possession, and Ja makes him pay for it. But I know you're talking about how exciting the series could be before it started, and it's definitely kind of planned out that way. I mean, there's been maybe 1 or 2 kind of blowouts, but just kind of overall, in series as a whole, it's definitely been exciting. Edwards had 22 the other day, Cat 28, Ja 30. Brandon Clark's been really good for Memphis in the series. He had 9 offensive rebounds alone in the last game. And Desmond Bane, as he's been all season, has been the super solid scorer for them. Curry, do you think Minnesota forces Game 7 in the series?
I think Game 6 will definitely be interesting. I think Ja Morant needs to be a little more consistent this series, because I think that's been one of the struggles for him. Obviously, it's been pretty much a tale of 2 halves for him. First half, he definitely struggled, wasn't shooting the ball well. And then second half, he just turned the notch up and, played with that energy that he does. Obviously, that electric dunk at the end of the 3rd, was a big momentum shift for that Grizzlies team heading into the 4th quarter to pull out the win. Obviously, you mentioned the last 3 possessions with the Ja. What was it? The layup at the end, obviously. But before that, you had the Anthony Edwards 3-pointer to tie, and then Ja Morant's 3. So it was just good back. It was pretty fun to see, the future go back and forth like that. Ja Morant, right now, most improved player, shout out to him. And then Anthony Edwards, obviously, he's playing like a bright superstar. It's just great to see that 1-2 action right there. I think if Minnesota comes out shooting the ball well, I think Minnesota will definitely try to push this to a game 7 in Memphis. But you know what? Definitely foul trouble for Karl Anthony Towns. He needs to stay out of that. They got to limit the turnovers if they really want to, make game 6 very competitive. It's going to be an electric atmosphere in Minnesota for that game 6. But yeah, I'm definitely excited to see how this series ends. For Memphis, obviously, John needs, I think, just a little more consistency throughout the game. And I think the Grizzlies could potentially, end it right there in Minnesota. And then, I just love the back and forth, Twitter smack talk going back. Obviously, the whole "we in Minnesota now" thing with Karl Anthony Towns, that was fun to see. And then John Morant coming back with that, and now Ja saying like, "You stand your end," and like obviously, people who doubted this Grizzlies team after multiple games. So we'll see if we'll see how that Pat Bev versus John Morant game will be in Minnesota. I think Pat Bev, probably play with a little more energy since it's a winner go home situation. But yeah, series has definitely lived up to the potential that I have expected for it.
Yeah, and Beverly getting fouled out late was definitely pretty big, especially in that last possession. And you would think Beverly would have been on Ja, and he wouldn't have taken that gamble on the steal that led to Ja getting the layup to win the game. So definitely was a big factor in the final result. But either way, it was definitely a fun game.
Yeah, this also makes me. This is not a joke or anything, but this may be the last time we see a protester potentially at the Minnesota Timberwolves game with all these protests against the owner for animal rights. So we'll see what happens, but we may see another protest on Game 6. But yeah, definitely big game for Timberwolves. I think they're going to fill up the arena. And yeah, Pat Bev fouling out late last game was pretty much a key reason. John Morant, just dominated for that end of the fourth quarter.
You'd think that they're going to have like extra security like ready, but I mean they still found ways to, like, the girl dressed as a ref the last game, so it's like they always have their ways. So, but I think I'm not mistaken, they're like 2-1 the Wolves, like when the protesters were on the court, so maybe it helps them in a way. But but we'll move on to the last series that we're going to talk about. Suns bounced back as expected. I think most people expected them. Chris Paul wasn't going to get punked by Alvarado 2 games in a row. He bounces back, 22 points. Mikal Bridges had a huge game, 31 points, 8 and 19 points. And now they're saying that Booker could be back game 6 or 7, so that would be huge. He's currently listed as out for game 6, but he still has a chance to play. And then if the Pelicans do tie and get the 7 games, and Booker could be back at that point as well. Ingram had 22, which for his standards in the series, is like an average game. He's been averaging over 30 points for them. McCollum had 21, and they need one of those guys to score 30 plus to beat the Suns. I think even without Booker, they need one of those guys to have a bigger game. Valanciunas had another solid double-double, 17 and 14. But I mean, even though they're saying Booker could be back game 6, I assume that they're going to let him rest one more game and then bring him back game 7 if they need to. But do you think the Suns are just going to close out in 6?
Yeah. First off, definitely big game for Mikal Bridges. That was pretty much his offensive game of the year, in my opinion. Playing great, shooting the ball well, 31 points, leading the team. But yeah, we all knew Jose Alvarado wasn't going to get him twice in a row. Chris Paul, definitely big game for him, 22. Obviously now with this Booker news that he could potentially be back by game 6 or 7, already very surprising considering they were saying he was going to be out for at least the second series. So I don't know what kind of voodoo he got, but now there's a chance he only misses a few games in the same series is amazing to see. I think definitely if it's anything, it'll definitely be restricted minutes or coming off the bench if game 6 is a yes for him. And I think it will be the same for game 7. But I'd love to see this series go to 7. Just because I love seeing, Brandon Ingram just ball out against this defense right here. But yeah, I'm pretty confident that the Suns may win this in New Orleans in game 6, wrap it up. Even though New Orleans, yes, it's going to be a very electric arena, winner go home, BI in his front crowd. I still see the Suns winning this series in 6. I think obviously there's a bunch of scares with obviously Chris Paul getting locked down by Jose Alvarado, him doing his sneaky tactics coming from the baseline and all that stuff, causing that 8-second violation. But, I think Chris Paul already knows all his tricks now, and I think he's got accustomed to it. So I think Game 6 will be the end for the New Orleans Pelicans. And then you mentioned Brandon Ingram and McCollum. You mentioned one of them has to shoot at least get 30 points, and I 100% agree with you. It was an average game for Brandon Ingram. He dropped 22, which is good, but he needs to have at least 30 if he wants to compete with the Suns team, who is now playing a little deeper now that Devin Booker's out. But now since Devin Booker is probably coming back, now they're gonna have to shoot even better than they were to catch up with this team. So yeah, it will definitely be interesting to see how this Pelicans team will look Game 6. If they start shooting the ball well immediately, then it could be an interesting Game 6.
Yeah, for sure. We'll see if the Suns can close it out on the road or if the Pelicans force Game 7. I think this is Thursday as well, if I'm not mistaken, Game 6. So we'll see tomorrow as of our recording. And then we'll see if they can go Game 7 or if the Suns close it out. So now we'll transition into some NFL talk. We'll start off with some kind of like signings. It was announced earlier that the Cardinals Grant Gate got the 5th-year extension for Kyler Murray. So he would make, I think I saw roughly $30 million in 2023 if the two sides can't come to an agreement on an extension before. Kind of all offseason, there's kind of been some friction between the two sides, or at least that's what it has seemed like on the outside looking in. It sounds like for the most part, those talks have kind of died down of any potential trade. I mean, there's never really any real talks about a trade. There's all this kind of rumors and, kind of social media being social media and all of that. But it sounds like Kyler's in Arizona to stay for now. There's some jokes of him going to baseball, but that also has died down, those talks. I don't think anyone wants to play for the Oakland Athletics right now. But that's for another story for another day. But Korea, I guess this is kind of what we all thought, yeah.
Yeah, I knew this was going to happen. I knew the Cardinals can't let up that talented quarterback. Honestly, if he was going to the A's, he'd probably be in the starting lineup by tomorrow. I mean, no disrespect to the A's, but they are getting down in that prospect room. Let's just say that. But yeah, we knew Arizona was probably going to try and keep him. Obviously, the franchise quarterback. You mentioned all the friction, but it looked like that was just all social media buzz stirred up in in the media world that we live in. So. Yeah, it's good that the Cardinals extended, gave him that 5th-year option. We'll see how they work, how they try to get him an extension. Obviously, one of the biggest frustrations for Kyler Murray was just the poor performance in that last playoff game against the Rams, who won the Super Bowl. So I think Kyler is just voicing his frustrations with the organization, and now they're giving him an option, which means they're probably going to go on and acquire him some help, especially on the offensive line where he's always running for his life. So I think that's one of the biggest complaints because last game the Rams, though his last game, the Rams just lived in that backfield. Aaron Donald and Von Miller, just bringing their presence to Kyler Murray. So yeah, good to see Kyler Murray get his money. And the Arizona Cardinals are definitely invested in this man. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the Cardinals were definitely an interesting team last year. Starting, I believe they were like undefeated right to start the season, and then they had kind of slowly collapsed the second half of the year, and it was really the wild card loss against the Rams that really wrapped up nicely with the way they're kind of trending the whole second half of the season. So we'll see. They lost Christian Kirk.
I mean, they had a similar track record to that 2020 Pittsburgh Steelers team. I mean, that Steelers team looked undefeated. And then once everyone started figuring out their offense, their defense was on the field for, 90% of the time. And then they just couldn't do anything. I think that was the same thing with – I just wanted to add that. I think that was the same thing with this Cardinals team this year. They started undefeated, and then once, DeAndre Hopkins – well, this was DeAndre Hopkins, but once he got injured, that offense, was still figuring out, what to do without the number one receiver. And it was definitely a struggle to adjust. AJ Green had some good games, but a lot of him was being, in coverage against, bigger corners like Jalen Ramsey, better corners like that. So, yeah, this team was definitely missing DeAndre Hopkins. He'll definitely have him next year for sure. That'll definitely be a big reason that maybe the Cardinals, get that success back that they had at the beginning of the season last year.
Yeah, then losing Christian Kirk, we'll see if they can get a step forward from Rondale Moore, as well as potentially addressing a wide receiver position in the draft coming up. We'll see if they do that or if they're comfortable. I think they re-signed AJ Green, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, so they brought him back, I believe. So they'll have him and then Rondale Moore potentially taking a step forward, along with hopefully Hopkins can stay healthy for their sake, but we'll see how all that plays out. Then we'll move into Melvin Gordon resigning a one-year deal with the Broncos. Us fantasy football, many of us in the industry were hoping that he would leave so that Javonte Williams could get like a workhorse load. But I mean, it makes sense for the Broncos, from a real life standpoint, to bring back Gordon. I mean, he averaged 4.5 yards per carry, so he definitely showed he still has some left in the tank. And him and Javonte were one of the better kind of tandems in the league last season from like an efficiency standpoint. So, I mean, I still expect Javonte to see a little bit more work this year. It was pretty much a 50-50 split in terms of opportunity last year. I'm thinking it's going to be more like 60-40, 65-35 in favor of Javonte heading into year two. It's going to be a more fast-paced offense with Russell Wilson on their center. And so I think that is going to fit Javonte's kind of skill set and his explosiveness a little bit better, especially in the passing game and, in the 2-minute offense and all of that. So I think Javonte is going to see the field, more than he did last year as a rookie, which, is to be expected. Melvin Gordon's still going to do his thing. He's still going to have his role. But I still think Javonte is going to be the clear at least 1A to Melvin, being the 1B in that backfield. But definitely is going to be one of the more exciting offenses, at least on paper. With Russell Wilson there now to go, and then Judy, Sutton, Tim Patrick in the passing game, and then Melvin Gordon, Javonte in the running game. Korea, what was your take on this?
Yeah, I saw the reports that Melvin Gordon was potentially going to the Baltimore Ravens, and I was obviously, as a J.K. Dobbins owner myself, I was getting a little scared. I was getting a little nervous, hearing that Melvin Gordon was linked to that Baltimore team. So from a fantasy standpoint, I'm very pleased that he chose to stay in Denver and not go to Baltimore. But yeah, you mentioned for a fantasy standpoint, obviously that really does hinder Javonte Williams' full potential. Obviously, there are a lot of fantasy owners like yourself and other people who really was hoping to see Williams kind of break out after last year. Obviously had a great year on the ground, the rookie year, first year running back. So, but from a realistic standpoint, this does provide a lot of depth for this Broncos team, who already is going to have already the high pace. You already talked about it with Russell Wilson. And then you have 3 good receivers in Sutton, Judy, and then Tim Patrick has had some good weeks. Obviously, one of the bigger things with health, with his team was health. Carlton Sutton missed a ton of games last year. Same for Judy. So that's going to be a big factor. But yeah, the depth of this team, obviously, having that platoon, that running back committee thing with Gordon and Javonte Williams, definitely going to be useful, especially in this, high-paced offense. And obviously, Melvin Gordon, Russell Wilson, both University of Wisconsin alums. So obviously they have that connection there. I think that's one of the bigger reasons why Melvin Gordon wanted to stay with his team. So Melvin Gordon staying in Denver, good for the Denver Broncos from like a realistic standpoint. But for fantasy owners out there who were obviously targeting Javonte Williams or looking to see what Denver's going to do with Melvin Gordon, obviously we found the answer. So yeah,
that's a good point with Wisconsin. I didn't think about that, but it's definitely a good point. It's a new coaching staff and all of that, so Melvin's not connected to them from last year or anything, but most of the offseason, it seemed like Melvin was most likely going to stay in Denver. Then there was a little bit of time where it seemed like he might leave when he was visiting Baltimore and all of that. But he wound up staying in staying in Denver. So they should be, again, one of the top kind of 1-2 punches in the league in terms of kind of backfield production, efficiency, and all of that. So now we'll move on to the Jaguars extending Cam Robinson. They gave him the franchise tag, so that gave him some more time to give him the extension. I think it was 3 years, $54 million. I believe I've written down. So definitely will be good for Trevor Lawrence and offensive line long term. And again, it makes it more likely that they probably go either Kayvon Walker or Hutchinson, number 1 overall, to help the defense, because you have Cam Robinson kind of anchoring the offensive line. But of course, you never know. The draft has crazy things that happen every year, so it's pretty much impossible to really truly predict what's going to happen. But what was your thought on this career?
Yeah, pretty much. Locking down some good offensive line help for Trevor Lawrence. That was one of the bigger struggles for him. This past season. Very obviously Trevor Lawrence did not have the best of years. A lot of people said he had like one of the worst years for a quarterback. And obviously that was just due to the system that he was surrounded with. I think, that offensive line was just absolutely horrendous. And then, the coaching staff, with Urban Meyer, Mr. When come sit on my lap. And then there's, just Trent Baalke. That whole organization is just a mess right now. So it's good that they got Trevor Lawrence some offensive tackle help. Yes, you could rule out the fact that they will. Obviously, there was rumors that they were going to draft a running offensive tackle, like Ike Ekwonu out of NC State, potentially Evan Neal, an offensive tackle like that. But now it's kind of, maybe signaling down that Baalke and that Jags organization is thinking defensive end or just defense in general. And obviously, Trayvon Walker, now the favorite to be number 1 overall, has been rising draft boards throughout this offseason, heading up to the draft. So. But there's also the chance of Aiden Hutchinson. But you never know with this Jags team. But right now, locking in Cam Robinson, one of the better offensive tackles for that Jaguars team, was definitely one of their biggest keys this offseason to make sure that he is staying and didn't want to have to put the tag on after he put the tag on him. So they just wanted to keep him, but definitely good that they got him signed to a good contract. And we'll see what they do tomorrow, though. It'll be interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Good for Cam Robinson getting his bag and all that. Definitely well deserved. So now we'll just kind of finish off, NFL draft, the round 1, the eve, as the title of this episode is, the eve of the NFL draft. Just kind of some of the latest kind of rumors and all that. Again, rumors don't mean much to come because there's a lot of smoke screen and all that this time of year, but apparently the Jets loved Ikem Ekwonu, the offensive tackle of NC State, so they have number 4 pick, so that could be a reasonable time for him to go. The Giants at number 7 and the Seahawks number 9 have received calls about their picks, so the Giants have the 5th and the 7th, so it wouldn't shock me if they trade one of those. I've heard rumors of the Seahawks both trading up and back, so it's really 50-50 on what could happen. What's going on, Curry?
No, I thought when I heard that they were receiving calls, I just assumed that they were trading down because that's the John Snyder way. But now I hear them trading up. Oh, brother, I've
heard because the Panthers obviously could be in the market for a quarterback, and so I've heard if they like Malik Willis that much, if the Lions pass them at number 2, then they could have the Giants trade up to the Giants number 5, and the Giants get the 9 and 1 or 2 other picks if they like them that much. But I think those are the kind of the baseline of those kind of rumors. Again, they only mean so much because GMs will kind of want to try to trick other teams into, giving them more than what they want, than what the pick might be worth and all that if they're interested in the player, quote unquote interested. But yeah, this draft's going to be super interesting. Like we've talked about it before, how it's, and sometimes people say it every year. There's people that say it every year, but this is definitely the first year where there's not quarterback heavy at the top, and it's going to be, edge dominant with potentially Walker, Hutchinson, and Thibodeau potentially going top 1, 2, 3, and all of them going top 3. It's a possibility. If the Jaguars do go Walker, then it makes sense for the Lions at 2 to go Hutchinson just because he's kind of a Michigan guy. And so, Dan Campbell, is a player's coach and all of that. And so it would be kind of cool to see Hutchinson kind of stay in Detroit and kind of try to help turn around that defense with the Lions. But yeah, and I've also heard the Lions could be in on Malik Willis, but they might take a Goff 1 more year as a bridge quarterback and wait for 2023 class. So many kind of different twists and turns, and I think we should see at least 3, 4, maybe 5 trades. It seems like in the first round, potentially a Deebo Samuel trade in the middle of round 1. It seems like the Baker Mayfield talks have kind of dwindled down, but maybe they could come back up at when a team's on the clock. Is there anything else that you've heard that you want to kind of touch on?
I mean, yeah, you pretty much mentioned all that. One thing I want to mention, I heard the Jets are also linked to Jermaine Johnson, the JUCO product. He was on Last Chance U. Great season for him at Florida State. I heard they really like Jermaine Johnson, so definitely they could pull the trigger there. Obviously, you mentioned the Deebo trade. That could play in effect too, with the Jets being pretty much the clear favorites right now to potentially land him tomorrow. I've seen, obviously, you mentioned the Seahawks receiving calls for a trade. The Giants now, obviously, with Kadarius Toney now shopping him, they could maybe use him in a package for a trade as well on draft night. I've seen some boards where Kayvon Thibodeau was as low as 14, so even falling out of the top 10, which I found kind of ridiculous. I saw some draft picks where the Seahawks may draft Thibodeau if he falls down to 9. So honestly, you said it first. I mean, this is pretty much one of the more unpredictable drafts. Obviously, pretty much the last 3 years, we've kind of known, okay, which quarterback is going number 1 overall to what team, with Joe Burrow in 2020 going to the Bengals, 2019, I believe it was, who was it, 2019?
I know it was Lawrence, and then last year, and then, last year.
Yeah, last year to the Jags was Lawrence. I mean, 2019, I forgot. I know 2008. Oh, no, 2019 was Kyler, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, Kyler to the Cardinals. So that's another quarterback. And 2018, it was Baker. So that's another quarterback. So now this is pretty much the first draft where we honestly don't know if it's going to be offensive tackle or defensive tackle or defensive end. I'm excited to see what plays out tomorrow. There's so many storylines. Obviously, some of them could be smoke screens, to kind of, stir up things in the media, especially with the Jags pretty much saying that they don't know who to pick. But now I think the Jags low-key revealed their cards with signing Cam Robinson to that contract today. I think they're going to go defense, and I think it's just going to be between Trayvon Walker and Aiden Hutchinson. But I think they really do like Trayvon Walker a little more. So it'll be definitely interesting to see, who is actually number 1 and number 2 tomorrow. And obviously, pretty much the list to follow after in the first round. So definitely going to be one of the more intriguing first rounds. I also saw an over-under for how many wide receivers are taken in the first round, and I saw people taking the over. Obviously, you mentioned a deep class, this wide receiver class led by.
What was it? What was the over-under set at?
6.5.
6.5.
Yeah, so wide receiver in the first round was 6.5. Obviously, you mentioned the depth with Williams, Traylon Burks, Olave, Williams, Wilson, and then Drake London. All that talent is probably going to get snatched up with a bunch of teams, looking for those wide receivers. So I think a lot of teams will maybe trade up for, a star wide receiver that they want to take the gamble on.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It seems like every year there's kind of one class that kind of stands out as the deepest, and this year's that's definitely wide receiver. So that would be exciting. So round 1 is Thursday. Rounds 2 and 3 is Friday, and then 4 through 7 will be Saturday. So look forward to all of that. We're going to be away on Friday, so next Monday is probably most likely when we'll kind of recap the whole NFL draft and kind of how it went down. We'll probably eventually kind of go through each team and their draft class and kind of go through what positions they addressed and all of that. And, there's still some free agents kind of waiting for the NFL draft to go through, so we'll kind of look at those and what teams might go after those free agents based off, what positions they couldn't address in the draft and all of that. So we'll go over all that stuff as well as the weekend in the NBA playoffs on Monday as well. Was there anything else you wanted to go over today, Korea?
I hate ending the show on bad notes again. But another tragedy out of James Madison University softball team. Lauren Burnett, only 21 years old. Right now, as I last checked, they didn't know the details on the cause of death, but a lot of people are linking into mental health and death by suicide, with people saying you really don't know what people are going through, some of her teammates. So it's just another message, just checking on your friends, checking on people. because you never know. And I think this trend in college sports, I think it's really getting to a lot of players. It's just an unfortunate trend where we see a lot of suicide deaths, death by suicide, within the collegiate athlete world. And I think it's a trend that just needs to, just whittle down. And, just it's a shame that I have to say this again, but we just got to just check in on your friends, talk to people, because you never know. So it's definitely another tragedy to see, unfortunately. Thoughts out to, her teammates, friends, family, coaches, everyone close to her. Just tragic. It's just something you hate to see, especially on back-to-back days. It's just ridiculous. You hate to see something like this. So, especially with D1 collegiate athletes. So I think this, if we really want to change them, I think the investigation on what's going on with these collegiate athletes really needs to be addressed. But yeah, Ari, any quick thoughts?
I also prayers out to her friends, family, teammates, and all that. I also saw the Florida women's soccer coach was basically fired because he was caught. I believe he was caught saying bad things to them about their weight and all of that and all. So, and he came from Arizona. He was the Arizona soccer coach. He went to Florida for 1 year and got fired because of just kind of comments that coaches shouldn't be saying to the players. And so definitely, like you said, check in on your friends and all of that, because you could think you know everything, but you don't know everything that's going on with even people you think you are the closest with. Prayers out to her friends, family, teammates, everyone that knew her. Definitely a shame that we had to talk about this back-to-back episodes, but definitely something that needs to be talked about more to kind of try to help people get through what they're going through.
Let's end on a happy note real quick. The Bucks are beating the Bulls easily right now, 49-27. Bucks looking like they are trying to make their name in that East, where we've talked about teams like Boston and teams like Miami and Toronto, but everyone keeps sleeping on the Bucks. So great to see the Bucks, potentially wrap up this series tonight. Obviously, the Warriors play tonight as well. And then games for tomorrow, we have Game 6 between the Raptors and Sixers in Toronto, and then the Suns Pelicans in New Orleans, and then Mavs Jazz in Utah. Definitely be some good games to watch over, but that's enough for me. I know, Ari, after a touchy subject, I think we both want to go watch the Mariners and have some fun. But we'll see you guys on Monday, the beginning of May. It's right around the corner. We will give you a recap of the draft. We're going to start with obviously with the Seahawks, see how they did this coming weekend, and we'll be giving you some more analysis from the draft. And we'll always catch you up with the latest with the NBA. But this has been another episode of AKP Sports Talk. We will see you guys Monday, May 2nd.